The following presentation was recorded live in Kansas City, Missouri for CALLERLAB's 23rd Annual Convention. This is tape number 15, Showmanship Through Choreography.
All right, we're about ready to begin, so if you guys will find yourself a seat, nice and comfortable. Okay, now one of the instructions we get is to make these sessions lively. That's not this. So when I raise up my right hand, everybody say, good point. No. When I say, good point. Ready? Good point. Thank you. That's pretty lively. Yeah, really. Okay, the name of this session is? What's the name of the session?
Wait a minute. Showmanship through choreography.
Showmanship through choreography, and it's got one of those Roman numerals next to it, doesn't it? 2 or 3? This is 2. My name is Kip Garvey from California. I'll be your moderator. And on my right-hand side, we have from Texas, Mr. Wayne. It is Texas, isn't it? Yeah, Mr. Wayne Morvent. Give him a hand. Right over here, my good friend Larry Cole. And where are you from, Larry? Indiana. And we'll be sharing some ideas with you, and then later on we'll be asking you to share some of your ideas with us. The topic, they always make these topics broad enough so that we have enough latitude where we can come in and pick on some particular aspect of the subject matter that happens to be intriguing to us, or perhaps we just feel needs more discussion. With that regard, I put together a paper that I called Variety and Complexity in Today's Choreography. Now, there have been a few papers that have been written on the subject, and yet I still find that it's one topic that creates a lot of confusion in the minds of callers and dancers alike, as a matter of fact, basically because it lacks a clear definition and a clear, concrete foundation of understanding. When we talk about variety, I've heard some callers automatically relate that synonymously with complexity. And I've heard other callers, when they talk about complexity, what they really mean to say is variety. It clouds an issue when you can't agree on what your terms mean. And so, when we're talking about developing a basic program or developing a mainstream program, by using variety, it has less meaning because the word variety means different things to different callers and to different dancers alike. Now, my attempt is to hopefully add a little clarity to those two terms, variety and complexity, because we use them, especially from the standpoint of showmanship. We use these as underlying tools, especially the variety aspect and how we play on complexity. Now, until you understand what I mean by those two terms, we really can't have much more of a discussion on it. Complexity, in my mind, is very subjective. It is highly subjective because you're dealing with a group of dancers in front of you on the floor, whether they're your regular dancers or whether you're in town doing a one-night stand, that have varying degrees of ability based on their exposure, their dancing exposure, their knowledge that they've attained. Certain choreography will appear complex to them, and certain choreography will appear simple to them. And furthermore, what appears complex initially, once we show the dancers how to do it, becomes somewhat more simple. Can we agree with that? So therefore, to my way of thinking, complexity is purely subjective. Purely subjective. And when you're traveling on the road, you have to be able to ascertain the ability level of the floor within the first tip, hopefully within the first half of the first patter. And by that, you need to know what's going to be complex for these dancers and what's going to be simple. You also need to have, in your bag of tricks, developed choreographical themes that can be delivered from a complex viewpoint or can be delivered from a simple viewpoint, depending on what the dancers need. And every group is different. This also applies with your home groups, because what you've taught your dancers and taught them well is simple for them to do. But how do your dancers react when they go to a traveling caller? They come back, some of them excited. Why? What are they excited about when they go to a traveling caller? It's not just because he might have sung a nice song or has an attractive voice or he's great looking. Could be all of those things. But chances are they did material and choreography that they knew they should have been familiar with from a somewhat different perspective. And so what became at first complex for them became simple, and they succeeded. And they come back excited. Now your dancers can also come back to you saying, I'll never dance to that guy again. We stood all night. And you're thinking to yourself, God, what could he have called to my wonderful great dancers, who I've taught so well, that they found to be so complex that they stood all night? Was it his delivery? Was it the combinations of calls? But you see, if you get where I'm going with this whole theme, complexity had to deal just with that floor for that night. And the traveling caller had to deal with what he had with that group. You've got a different problem because you know your group. And part of your job as a teacher is to teach to your group things that they don't know. Now, I'm not talking about calls. I'm talking about applications of calls. So the next time they go out, they can eat this guy's lunch and come back with a smile on their face and say, gee, we had a good time. He wasn't so tough after all. Okay? Now, I've got a lot of little choreographic tidbits in here, and I'm not going to go through them all. But if you'll permit me to further define choreographic variety, variety is how a caller handles complexity. You need to have a lot of variety in order to be able to handle any situation that comes along, or at least most of the situations that come along. A lot of you have heard the situation in Europe where the dancers are very well trained. I agree with that. They are. And if you go to call in Europe and you only have a one-dimensional approach towards your choreography, one way to deliver your material, they're probably going to eat your lunch. All right? These are well-refined dancers, and they do not find combinations that we normally use back here in the States to be complex at all. They find those combinations to be routine. And if you take a look at variety, variety is made up of quantity and combinations of calls. It's made up of positional interpretations of calls, and it's made up of applications of concepts. Now, we deal with all of these while we teach. And for the sake of improving our product, we must improve our teaching if we're going to improve our product. We need to know, for instance, what's the first point at which our dancers are exposed to the whole idea of interpreting a concept. What is the first point, the very first call that we teach our newer dancers, where the dancers must become formation aware? Formation aware. Let's just pick that one. Formation aware. When do the dancers absolutely need to know formation awareness? What's the very first call? Sir? In my opinion, it's circulate. Circulate is the first call that we teach our dancers where they have to move relative to positions within a formation. And so we're requiring them, for one of the first times, to become formation aware. And I don't care which circulate you want to start with. Personally, I usually start with two-face line types of circulates. That's the first circulate I do. But you do a two-face line circulate, you do an ocean wave circulate, you do a column circulate, and what are you asking the dancer to do? To move relative to positions within a formation. So that's one of the first calls that we use that really taxes the dancer to know where he is within a formation and to move through the formations. How about the first call that we teach, and I might be wrong on this, it's just my opinion, all right? You guys might have a different one, but it's valuable to know that we need to think about these things. When do we ask dancers to respond to concepts? What's one of the first calls that we use? Anybody? Stars are pretty good. In my mind, it's trade by. And the reason is because a lot of the calls we teach in basic, up before and prior to trade by, are simple actions where the dancers are all doing the same action or something very similar to it, whether it's do-si-do, right and left through, ladies chain. But trade by becomes one of the first calls that they learn, where they have to do an action that's dependent on where they stand position-wise in a formation. If they're facing out, they do a partner trade, a totally like different call. If they're facing in the center, they do a pass-through, which is like a different call. So I call that a complex combination because it's made up of more than one simple call, and they have to combine them and know which one they need to do. So in discussing complexity, if you've just taught your dancers to move along and follow a particular flow without becoming formation aware or without being able to ascertain concepts within calls, even at the basic program, then a lot of things are going to be complex to your dancers. A lot of things are going to be complex. But if you've taken the time to really analyze what each of these basic calls does and the different formations it can be done from and the different arrangements and how the dancers should react in your teaching, then you are better preparing the dancer to go out and enjoy different applications of the same calls. In other words, they become less complexity prone. They won't get injured as badly when they go out. Now, when we talk about preparation, and you'll see that I have a section on that in page 3, preparation is, it's just 99% of it, folks, and you know that, right? You've just got to do your homework. It's a tough thing for us to do in this day and age. We all work, we have day jobs, I do too, and you come rushing home, at 5:30, and you got to jump in the shower, scarf down some kind of a meal that you probably have to cook yourself. Now wait a minute now, guys. You need to understand, my wife has got a full-time job, and I do not impose my square dancing on her job or her life. When she makes it, that's fine. If she can't make it, that's okay too. There are many, many nights I never even see my wife because she leaves the house 6:30 in the morning and she gets in at 8, 9 o'clock at night. She's a manager. And so when I say cooking my own meal, believe me, it's just so good to have a home-cooked meal. That's why God made McDonald's, I guess. But at any rate, my point is that it's very difficult for us today to find time to prepare. And yet we really do have an obligation to our dancers to do that. And once you get yourself into a groove of setting aside 20 minutes a day, and that's all it takes, 20 minutes to a half an hour a day, to sit down and analyze a basic call and say, how can I present this to my dancers that's not necessarily different? I'm not really searching for variety. I'm searching to present it to them in such a way that they become more knowledgeable and more experienced when they execute that call. Okay? And believe me, there's just a ton of them that we've overlooked, that we haven't had the time to teach. And I'm not castigating you or myself. We've allowed ourselves to evolve to a situation where we just do not have adequate time to properly prepare our dancers. Hopefully, that's going to change, but that's a subject for another seminar. Take a look on page 3. Down below, there's a paragraph that begins with 1. There's a series of questions that I ask of every call before I teach it and present it. And even though I've been teaching calls for 30-plus years, I need to tell you, I still go over this list. I have this checklist in front of me because there are things that I just don't see the first time around, and then later on, I see it. So take a look at that. I'm not going to bore you by reading it because I figure you guys have gotten here by learning to read many years ago. So just take a look at that list and then take a look at the example on page 4, which is not a good one. The example on page 4 just happens to have a plus call in it. One that I've recently recognized, and I'm sure you have too, Chase Wright, is very weakly danced. Or let me put it this way. The dancers do not perform the Chase Wright action as cleanly as they should. And maybe it's time for that to be an emphasis call again if we got somebody in here in that committee. I know it was before, but it might be time to review Chase Wright again. And I'm sure you all know what I'm looking for when I do a Chase Wright. I know that you know what you're looking for, and how many times you call Chase Wright and the dancers just come out like totally different from what you expected. All right? You just try that half sachet Chase Wright. And invariably, they're going to end up in facing couples. I mean, there's just this thing about not wanting to go to a right forearm mini-wave situation. When they do it one way, you do it another way, wham. They want to get into that safety zone, that old comfort zone. Take my hand, I'm facing in. And so realizing this and realizing that I don't want my dancers to go out and feel embarrassed when they dance to a chase right just because a caller chose to do it from a half sashayed line back to back, or a half sashayed couple, or 4 men together or 4 girls together. I develop a little pattern, and I try to, in this particular pattern, I try to build it into a singing call so I can give it a total drill to my dancers on this thing. And here I'm exploiting the fact that they're probably not doing the chase right correctly. From the 0 box setup, step to a wave, explode the wave, chase right, and then I have the help phrases. You know, are you touching hands? Do you see your wave? And then explode the wave and chase right. Now take a good look at that. All right, that's dynamite. As a matter of fact, it could blow right up in your face. It's so hot. The reason being that there's a 90-degree formation change in that. Okay, there's a 90-degree formation change in that. They do a chase right, let's say going north and south, and then the next explode the wave sends them east and west, so the next chase goes east and west too. It makes a very effective 0, that particular combination, and it works nicely in a singing call. And you can do almost any combination in a singing call utilizing the same tool. Head square through, 4 hands, swing through. You can then say explode the wave, chase right, explode the wave, chase right. Recycle, swing the corner, and promenade. You can do a square through 4 hands, do-si-do, and just follow this right along. Explode the wave, chase right, check your wave. Do you see your wave? Explode the wave, chase right, falls right in nicely into the swing and promenade at that point. Okay? So, using that one simple example, you should design or try to design similar types of choreographic flows around areas that you find problematic with your dancers regarding the basic calls. Because let's face it, guys, if they're not dancing some of the plus calls or some of the mainstream calls correctly, it's probably due to the fact they're not dancing the basic calls correctly. All right. Now, we have this thing called warehouse full of product and no delivery truck. That's happened too. I have seen some of the callers fall into this trap. I know I have. And so I lay this out to you because I don't want you to fall into the same trap I have so many times. Where you decide, damn, my stuff is getting stale. I need some new stuff. I think I'll go to CALLERLAB. They always have stuff at CALLERLAB. And you run out there and you start writing and writing. And you get out to your very first dance and you're calling a brand new dance. All brand new material. And that floor is not moving at all. What's going on? You know, those guys gave me a bunch of junk there at CALLERLAB. No, the fact of the matter is that people dance to you and they expect you to have certain flow patterns and certain combinations. And for you to make a drastic change overnight is to really con these dancers. They don't know where you're coming from at all. All they know is, huh, Kip sure was off tonight. Never saw him call that much junk before. And so when I go over a lot of this stuff with you, please remember I don't use this all in the same. I could theme an entire tip out of one of these examples. An entire tip. And I might not need more than one theme tip in an entire dance to offer that group, whether it's my group or somebody local I'm calling for, to offer them enough variety. And this is where my variety meets complexity. They come together. Complexity being subjective, I have to measure it and see in my dancers what's complex for them. And I also understand that what's complex for them tonight might not be complex for them next month or the month after or the next year when I go in. And then I have to have enough variety to entertain the dancers at their level of complexity. So, let me give you another example of what not to do. Hate to do that, but to figure out, for instance, that all your dancers should be doing left-hand stuff. You know, I haven't done any left-hand stuff with my dancers. I'm going to do left-handed stuff tonight. And you get up the first tip where the head's left square through 4 hands and left touch a quarter, and you got to scoot back in there, and you got to hinge left to a split circulate, 1.5 to a diamond, flip the diamond, swing through, center start, they'll never get that. All right, that's the wrong approach. That's not what guys mean by variety. All right? You have really misused the tool if you think that that would be effective for variety, because your variety never met the complexity. All right? You got to do that. You have to measure how much ability your dancers have and then make the variety meet the complexity. Now, take a look at the first one from a static square. Oh, this is a good one. Pick this up on the internet, by the way. How many of you are on the internet? How many of you are on SD callers? Got your pens out? Send an email to, hope I remember this, Majordomo, Majordomo, one word, at D, like in David, MS, home, H-O-M-E, that's all one word, DMS home, dot, Youngstown, dot, OH for Ohio, dot, US. And in the body of the email, put just one sentence. Say, subscribe, space, SD-callers. One word, SD-callers. That's all you need to do. And at that point on, you have then subscribed to a list, a mail list, of over 225 callers who are exchanging ideas, and you have just put into your life the next biggest time waste. You'll be up to 3 o'clock in the morning answering email. I can't let that one go by. But at any rate, it's a great idea. You don't have to answer. You can just sit by and audit if you want. A lot of callers do that just to see what the conversations are. And let me tell you, there's a lot of water that goes over that dam. But every once in a while, there's a real gem you can pull out. And this happens to be one of them. The 4 ladies chain, heads make it a flutter wheel. Then 4 ladies chain, sides make it a flutter wheel. Alaman left and weave the ring. That's a nice little combination that really will wake the dancers up, but don't expect them to do it the first time. You've got to prep the dancers for this type of a delivery. But once they have it, they own it. It's no longer complex for them once they understand it. On the second one, we have the old triple Alamand, which is also a great little sequence to be using. Alaman left, ladies star, boys promenade. Alaman left, men star, girls promenade. Alaman left, and a right and left grand. Okay? That's great. With a nice peppy piece of music, all of a sudden we're utilizing some of the stars and Dharf type figures and the ring work and the arm turns that were very, very popular back years ago. And you use that just like it was a little bit of spice. You don't do it too much. You do it 2-3 times a night. But that adds variety. Can we expect dancers today to do a triple Alamand right out of the chute the first time around? Don't introduce it in a singing call. All right, especially if you expect to get through 7 times with all the corner changes and everything else. It won't happen. All right? But by playing with it in the hoedown and the hash part of your singing call, of your tip, you can get the dancers to do a triple Alamand, and they will enjoy it. Take a look at the heads left square through. Is that heads left square through? Left swing through, recycle, left square through 3, and a right and left grand. There's a figure that's just chock loaded with stuff. Now, you take a figure like that, a simple figure like that. You say, oh, that's not simple, that's complex. Well, not to people who use left hands a lot. People who use left-handed stuff a lot, that's a simple figure. You see my point about subjectivity and complexity? All right? You can start by doing just a heads left square through 4 and see how the floor reacts to that. Okay? And if you're doing a plus type of tip, you can follow that with a reverse single circle to a wave. If you're not, try a seesaw. Come out of that left square through with a seesaw. Around the corner, make a wave. I need men in the center of that wave. Okay? You got your boys trade. And I would bail out at that point. That tells me everything I need to know about these dancers. They're either with me at this point or they're taking a coffee break. But if they're with me at this point, I'm still going to bail out because I can come back to that whole figure a second time or a third time or a fourth time. And this is what we mean by theming the tip. I can also run a variant of this by working with a across-the-street box. All right? It's just as easy to work this module across the street, bring it back to the other side, work it over here again. You can theme an entire tip out of that. Take a look at the next one. Now, these are all purposely written to be different. All right? Maybe they're not different for you. Maybe this is stuff your dancers do all the time. But there's a ton of this stuff. If you will just do some research, you can find your own, and it's all great, great material. Heads right and left through, courtesy turn with a quarter more. Head girls trade, veer right, all veer right. Jack Murtha was in here the session just before, and he's using the veer right, all veer right situation, and that's something that we seldom see out our way. The callers out our way are all veer left, and the dancers will veer left very nicely. What do you look for with your first veer right when the dancers? What? I even tell them, no, not blood, but that might be right. But I'll even say to the dancers, that's right, 2 steps left, 4 steps right. And because they get that lean in there. Now, why is it that the dancers do this? Is this a problem? Have we not taught the dancers correctly? No, this is just something that's human nature and that you should expect, because the dancers have an auditory reaction to the word veer. That's what they hear first. They don't hear the right. They hear veer. When you hear veer, your first thing is everything shifts to port. Then you hear right. Everything shifts to starboard. So it's not a problem of the call. It's just something that you need to anticipate, that you can expect the first time you call a veer right, those dancers are probably going to lean left and then go right. Now, this particular setup for the veer right is something that I know my dancers don't often see, and that's why I did it. Heads right and left through, courtesy turn with a quarter more, sets up that left face, 2-face line in the center. The ladies' trade sets up the proper flow, and if I can get veer right out fast enough, those men won't want to move out of the square. That's another type of thing that they're not going to want to do. Even though they might shift a little, they'll veer right. And believe it or not, they'll make it smoothly. Once you get them moving to the right, the second veer right just falls right in, except for the outside couple. They're still wondering what the inside couples are doing. You have a veer right, all veer right, Ferris wheel, zoom, square through 3. Okay, subroutines for the above sequence. If they just float through that, and there's no problem, then we go into heads right and left through, courtesy turn with a quarter more, center ladies trade, or the head ladies trade, veer right, right and left through, pass through trade by, same exact get out, same flow almost. And then we have one that says for the really proficient plus dancers. And I really jumped a huge gap here. Now, first of all, I went from basic mainstream into plus, but aside from that, as far as complexity goes, there's a huge complexity gap here, possibly. So let me warn you before you run right out and use this. Heads right and left through, courtesy turn with a quarter more. The head girls trade, veer right, reverse single circle to a wave, swing through 1.5, all 8 circulate to an Allemande left. Now, if I've decided I'm going to use this particular pattern, if I decide, you got a question, I can tell. What? Hang on a minute, I'll get right to you. If I decide I'm going to use this pattern in a tip, I'm going to start with a simple application with my idea, my objective being, I'm going to eventually get the dancers to do this. If I have plus dancers, I'm going to eventually get them to do this. And you can rewrite that routine and make it nothing but mainstream. You don't need reverse single circle to a wave. Okay? You don't need it. What would you use instead? Good point. Hello? You guys aren't going to get the T-shirt if you don't wake up. You can do a left touch half. All right? You can do a left touch. How about left touch a quarter? Can I hinge? Thank you. Thank you. Left. So any combination that will equal a left touch half as long as I use mainstream choreography? Yeah, I just thought you were asleep. I'm just trying to catch you. No, that's right, Dave. You're absolutely right. Left touch a quarter and hinge will do it, and that sets up the left-handed wave. The swing through 3 hands can be called simply by having the girls trade in the center, and then do a left swing through. And then the all 8 circulate is an all 8 circulate. And that'll bring you right to the corner, hopefully. In any event, so you can translate these things from plus to mainstream and vice versa sometimes. We have from the 0 box. Let me give you a nice little singing call. Nice little singing call, Figure. This is on Showmanship Through Choreography, and I need to go back and see if I can get a link here, because I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm not trying to just give you a bunch of clever stuff here. But what makes a caller distinctively a showman is that he is able to empathize with that floor and get them to feel the excitement that he feels, and he should feel the excitement that they feel. The challenge here for the caller is to take these dancers who may or may not find these combinations complex, but to get them through it somehow. Let's work together as a team. When they get through and they get excited, I get excited. That's showmanship. That's making people leave the hall with a good feeling. A good feeling. They have been entertained. So if we take a look at the next sequence we have here. Oh, I was going to give you a singing call, Figure. Heads past the ocean. Extend. Scoot back. Walk and dodge. Walkers trade. Chain down the line. I forget the rest of it. Chain down the line, I think, ends up with a Dixie style to a courtesy turn to a roll promenade. I think that's it. Sound right, Wayne? Wayne says, yep, that's it. Ran it through the computer. It works. But if you wrote that down, or if you get the tape later on, you'll be able to pick that thing apart and see the elements that went into putting together that particular figure. All right? That figure will either be very complex for the dancers or very simple, depending on their training, experience, knowledge, and ability. Let's see if I get another one here. Head square through 4. Touch a quarter. Same theme. Touch a quarter. Walk and dodge. Walkers trade. Swing through, girls run, slide through, swing and promenade. Now that whole combination will give you a right-hand lady change, okay, as opposed to a corner change. And what makes it intriguing is the dancers are getting into a left-handed wave, and it's not a zero arrangement of a wave. It's one of the odd numbers, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And when they do the walkers trade, that brings them into a situation where they're ready to do the swing through with the centers start, then the ends. That leaves you in a wave, men facing in, girls facing out, left-handed. The girls run left around the men, slide through, swing a right-hand lady for a full promenade. Okay? Now you take a figure like that and you take it apart and say, what do I need to do to get the dancer to do that whole combination? And you want to take it apart a bit at a time, and what you've just did is you built a theme tip around that whole idea. Slide through, one of the most powerful calls that we have. It's one of the very few calls we have in the basic program. Is that the basic program or mainstream? Dave? Was that? What is it? Oh. Now he's sleeping. Regardless, we know that slide through is one of the few calls that we have that can be done from all 6 arrangements. All 6. The 0, the half, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it is also one of the calls that is sex dependent. The definition has a thing called sex dependency. You know, a boy that's always been born a boy who started dancing in the Beau's position when the tip started, boy, that's a lot of qualifiers, isn't it? After he passes, the person he's facing will always make a right face turn, vice versa for the lady, or the belle. So, come up with something nice for your slide-through stuff that you can use as a goal. Okay? Here's one that uses a combination of slide-throughs that go 8, 6, 4, and 2. If I can get this right. Lady number 2 and lady number 3 face your corners and box the net. Now the heads pass through, separate, round 1 to a line. You've developed 2 facing lines where boys facing boys and girls are facing girls, but they alternate. It's like a boy, girl, boy, girl. Now you say all 8 are 8 that can slide through, 6 that can slide through, 4 that can slide through, 2 that can slide through. Those that can put centers in and cast off 3/4. Now it sounds like you'd have a quagmire after that, but the get out is star through, square through 3 hands, swing the corner and promenade, or Alaman left and promenade. All right? And you can take that as a goal and say, by the time I finish my tip here, I want these dancers to be able to do that particular figure. And the showmanship comes in because you've built this whole thing up ahead of time in your mind. You've worked them slowly with slide-throughs. Your objective is to get them to this figure. And just before you do it, say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, this one is a 15-pointer. 15 points if you can get this one. Here we go. And if you've done everything correct, you're not going to have anybody in that hall that doesn't own 15 points when they finish. All right? And if you do it again. Whoop, that didn't count, just a dry run. Do it one more time. Okay. So I'm going to turn the microphone over. There's a few more things in here. If you have any questions on them, please come up and ask. Some of the stuff is exciting. Some of the stuff is old but still good. And maybe some of the stuff is junk. I don't know. But I hope you can pick something out of that you like. I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleague from Indiana, Mr. Larry Cole.
Let's give Kip a nice hand. Hip, hip. I like working these with Kip because once he's finished, you really don't have to do much other than dismiss you. No, I mean that in a good way. Kip has an amazing amount of knowledge, and he's quite generous in sharing it, and does a super job with it. Showmanship through choreography, to me, is anything that you as a caller can develop that makes you just a little bit different than everybody else in the area you normally call in. It doesn't have to be necessarily fantastic. It just has to set you apart from everybody else a little bit. Just enough that makes you somewhat different. It does have to work. If it doesn't work, there wasn't much showmanship in it. It doesn't matter whether you screwed it up or you simply gave the floor more than they could possibly handle and took the ability away from them to make you look good. The fact is, it didn't work, and it wasn't showmanship. It can very easily turn into show-offmanship at that point, where they merely stand out there and watch you call all this fabulous stuff that they can't begin to dance because it makes you feel good that you did something that nobody else is doing. Don't get caught in that trap. Don't get caught in that trap. It sure makes a long night if anybody stays until the end. The showmanship stuff that works for me, I don't use full tilt every tip all night. I heard a comment in the hall at the breakdown that I thought was great, and I don't even know from what conversation that came from. I just heard it as I walked by. The comment was, it can't be all fancy all night. There has to be some plain meat and potatoes in your dance. There has to be some plain meat and potatoes in your dance. There has to be just some dance time. There has to be time for their mind to recycle and catch up and get ready to do something else. In my opinion, when I'm doing the showmanship part of my dance, if I don't have 95% of them dancing 95% of the time, I'm not doing my job. The idea of showmanship is not to run off and leave most of them. It's to let them do, the way I use it, 2 or 3 little short things that are just one notch different than everybody else is using. That's all it has to be for me, is just one notch different. Doesn't have to be a whole bunch. I greatly admire all of you who can use the long memorized or knowledge routines, if you will, that work out and really, really are snappy. I enjoy those. I appreciate the effort of the people who can use those. It never turned out to be my style. I don't use them. I appreciate those callers that can use the really intricate things in the singing calls that's kind of like a mouse running through a maze and all of a sudden, wham, there's the corner. That's great stuff if it fits your style. If it doesn't fit your style, it leaves you standing and nothing really good happening. You have to do what fits your personality as a caller. You have to search for those things that work for you. They might not work for Kip, they might not work for Wayne, but they have to work for you. And you have to make them so that the dancers get through them, so that they work for them also. Showmanship through choreography, I think, is directly related to our ability as a caller and the floor's dancing ability. If you run beyond their dancing ability, there's not much happening good for you, and there's not much showmanship going on. Likewise, if I am trying to call things in a showmanship manner in choreography that I'm not comfortable with, and I don't thoroughly understand, and I'm not real convinced where they're going to end, By the time all that hesitation gets in my voice and it comes out the microphone, you know, do this if you think you can. I'm not real sure, but it'd be nice if it worked out. Okay, go ahead and try it and let's see what happens. It ain't. Okay? If you don't believe in it, they won't do it. I'm still a little bit from the old school that if you're calling plus programs, and you want to call those plus programs well, and you want to have some showmanship and things to work with, go someplace and dance in somebody else's advanced program. Know what's happening in the next program. Steal ideas from the next program. If you're working in the advanced program, and you want to be good in that, and you want to have a little showmanship in that, and you want to have a nice following in that, go dance in somebody's C1 program. Go find out what else happens. Steal from that. Pick up the knowledge from that that makes you more confident at what you want to do. Don't go steal a little bit from it, run back home, convince all your people they ought to go learn it. Bring it back and use it to further your showmanship. I got on my paper just some very simple things that I've worked with over the years. I still like to find little bitty ways to do something just a little bit different than everybody else is doing it. I'd like to get a square up. And let's play a little while. Can we get a square real quick right over here? Now! Well, almost now. Kip, good point. And I like to go through some of the things that have worked for me, and that as things work and seem well, I keep them, okay?
Larry, I hate to interrupt you when you're on a roll, but I just want to point out to the fans, all the sessions I've been in, we got the same square.
Everybody doesn't like you that well.
Every session, same group. Give them a hand. Thanks, guys.
Same bunch of people?
Same group.
And over the years, I've explored things, and like I said, I tried to find any one little thing that's just a little bit different. I don't like the long routines. I noticed the one thing Kip had in here, he said, with the imaginary couple do. Oh, wonderful stuff. So much fun, and they'll do it if you don't overload it, you know. The part of it I'm going to steal. I never really had them do a dive through and don't duck. That's good. Who gave you that? Whose heads? Head step in, face corner, say hi. Touch quarter, and scoot back. Now, we can all do all kinds of things from here, but I've over the years called myself into these situations and then intentionally called something that I didn't know what I was going to do with afterwards, because now I got to work and I got to find something. Boys fold. Okay? Let's have the girls swing too. In the center, girls trade, and some of you are going to say that's overflow, and it doesn't bother me. I use the trade in the center after the swing through, and I'm comfortable with it. If you're not, don't use it. Okay?
Good point. If you're not, don't dance to me.
Now, when you get in my opinion, to showmanship and choreography, you start to stretch the rules. We're not changing the definitions. We're adding a little showmanship, and we're stretching the rules for that tip or that call. We're not signing a petition that says it ought to be changed. Okay? Let's don't get into an argument about that's not what the rule says, because we're not talking about the rules. We're talking about how to make ourselves just a little bit different without overloading the dancers. We can have we can have the girls extend to the boys, but everybody does that. We can have the girls step through and then do something with the boys, but everybody does that. How about everybody reach forward and star through? No big deal. But I've not been to a dance around home anywhere that anybody else did it that way. Everybody reach forward and star through, and it allows me still to be just a little tad different. Okay, bend the line. Slide through. Touch quarter. Scoot back. Now the boys fold again. Let the girls in the middle, at some point, you need a balance where they can take just a second and say, okay, now I know where I are. Have the girls in the middle do a do-sa-do. Same girls touch a quarter. Now, you need to tell them same girls, because at this point they're not used to that. They may look for other girls. Okay? You need little helper things as you go. No, true. You know, they're not used to touching a quarter like that. If you don't say same girls, some of them's going to go to the other square.
I use original girls. That works good.
Yeah. Gotta watch what group you're in. Knowing where you're from. Girls scoot back. Now, at home, to just drop that girl's scoot back on them, you're pushing. Okay? The in-facing ladies at that point aren't going to be real comfortable. So I may have another tip back, done some kind of girl scoot back to be ready for this. Boys, reach in, courtesy turn to girl, a little more than normal. You got a line, walk up to the middle and back. They're dancing that very smoothly. And to the area that I work in, that's different. Okay? It's not a big deal, but it's different. It gives me a little showmanship. People come through the line at the end of the dance and they tell me, I had fun, it was different. That's great. If they come through the line and tell me how wonderful the choreography was and what I did, I don't enjoy that, because that means the dance was too intricate or something. That I took the fun away, and I want them to have fun. I want them to come to me and tell me they had fun. A little bit different. That's wonderful. And a gal come through the line one night, and I don't think I got to her, Kip. No, because she looked up at me and she said, "You're just as big and loud as I thought." I said, "Thank you. My name's Kip Garvey. I appreciate you being here." Slide through. Touch quarter. Split circulate. Scoot back. And all the girls fold behind the boys behind. Boys in the middle. Touch a quarter. Now, at this point, to me, the boys will scoot back, the four of them, much better than the girls would have. I don't know why, they just do. No big deal. Boys scoot back. Now, we need to find something that's a little bit different. Now, all these routines do not go back to back, okay? You with me? We didn't set this up and dance all of this stuff back to back. This is scattered through the tip or several tips, maybe. Because you got an awful lot of scoot backs and an awful lot of turning if you dance all of this through the tip. Boys, walking forward and to the left around the girl, run around her once and a half. Go. Check a line, walk to the middle and back. If you don't say, boys, walking forward and to the left, they're not going to do that. But if you do, they will do that. They will go around her the once and a half because you already told them they were going to end in lines. They didn't have to figure that out. And it's different. It's not something that everybody else has done. Start through in California whirl. Touch quarter. Now, if all this has worked and worked well, then I expand on it later on in the dance. If it didn't work, I go to something else, because if it isn't working, throw it away. Okay? Scoot back. Boys fold. Boys gently, and I use gently because otherwise I've seen them grasp onto them like there was no tomorrow. Gently put your hands on her shoulders. Work as a team, okay? Now, I know it's tandems, and some of them might know it's tandems, but who really cares that it's tandems? We're doing a mainstream dance or something of that nature. Work as a team and do it do-side-do. If that works, we build on it. If it don't work, don't touch it again. You have to have a floor that can reasonably remain in step if you're going to do that. Okay? If it works good, I take this same thing on into a singing call figure later. But if it works good and they've done that well, and we haven't already done a lot of stuff, I may expand it right now. If not, we may expand it later. As a team, you got to tell them that every time. Touch quarter. Now, depending on how it's gone already, and this is something you have to use in your judgment, whether or not at this point you might say something like, girls, you have all the hands to work with. Boys, you're just following. Otherwise, everybody's going to be grabbing. As a team, scoot back. And you notice they kind of talk between themselves as to who was really in charge of that team. Turn the leaders of the team around. Most of them will decide that's the girls. Star through. And whatever you're back to lines at that point, okay? And you can play that same game. You can play that right into a singing call or love it. You can't play it into a singing call 3 tips in a row. You can't really play the whole theme into 3 or 4 tips in a row. But those are the things that have worked for me. Let's just square your set while we jack. Just little things that I've found that can be just a little bit different from somewhere, okay? And just from exploring and looking for different things that might work and make me just a little bit different. 4 ladies chain. Head ladies chain 3/4 and the side men turn them. You'll have 2 of them. If you don't tell them they're going to have 2 of them, they'll probably throw her away. Keep the helper hands in. They need help at this point, okay? Lonesome men, do-sa-do. Again, now you're working in judgment. How do they accept all the do-sa-dos? How do they accept the other things that you're going to do? Lines of 3, do-sa-do. Now, they did well, but I love it when they hold hands and all 3 of them move out here and go 3 across the back and 3 back, because then you play on that, okay? And if that happened, then you play on that a little bit, and you say, well, that wasn't too bad. All the girls do-sa-do. See, now they're trying to decide whether it's across from them or beside them. Go ahead, do-sa-do. Yeah. Well, that's okay if you let's. You know, it's really your option. It matters not to me. Okay. Side boys, do-sa-do. And we're just playing games at this point. We're having fun. Lonesome men swing each other. Okay. Now, you have to decide.
They do that in Indiana. They don't even do that in San Francisco.
You have to decide. You have to go back now and draw up on your judgment that you use for everything, whether that floor you're working with is going to do the lonesome men swing. Okay? You get some really good swings if you've got the floor cranked before you get into this kind of stuff, okay? Yeah, you know. Let's have lines of 3 touch a quarter. Same 6, scoot back. Now, if I say extend, some of you are going to say, well, we're out of the definition. Okay, no problem, because I don't like to do that either if I don't have to. Everybody move forward, one person. Now we got a column or something that we can work with and work out of where we were, okay? But something different that you can play with, and you can put it in one tip that makes it just a little bit different. Square your set with. And it's just things that I've looked for over the years that make it just a little bit different. Anyway you go. Heads past the ocean. Swing through. Have the gentleman run and the ladies hinge. If you got a plus club, it's a diamond. If you don't have a plus club, it's this thing in the middle. The other folks work through the center and square through 3. And they'll do that. Just 3, just me. Now, if you're working a plus club, you can have the center's diamond circulate and put the diamond. It's going to give you a wave. If you're not working a plus club and you don't want to do that, have the center ladies hinge once more, pick up a boy. Those people bend the line and pass the ocean. The others trade. In the ocean wave, raise your hands, make 3 arches. Through the arches, any one you want, square through 3. Good. If you did the square through 3, trade, the others swing through. Put your arms down. Raise your arms, make 3 arches again, okay? Through any arch you want, square through 3. At this point, you got the boys in the middle. You can do something like, get you, you know, and they get a kick out of that. And it's quick, it's fast, it's a little bit of showmanship. In the center, put your arms down, boy, run, bend the line, the others trade. If you did the bend the line past the ocean, extend the outside too, whatever you want to do that gets you back to calling other stuff, okay? I didn't take any of it to get outs. You can just mill around or whatever you want, okay? Yeah. Give him a nice hand. Let him sit down, because as far as I want to go with that. But what works for me is short, quick things that are just a tad different than anybody else is doing. And some of those have to still be injected with some fun, like the square through the arches. Now, if you're working a plus club, you can chase right through the arches. You can do a lot of things like that. If you do that once and you look at the floor and this floor doesn't really care for that night, don't beat them over the head with it. Go find something else. Showmanship is something that the floor that night you're calling to is enjoying and doing a good job of. So if you lay something out there as preliminary to work off of later and it's not received well, then give it up. Go do something else. Go back and just call some meat and potatoes for a while and give them something else back again. I still feel like we take a lot of the fun out of our dances because anymore we think people want to be too serious and do too much choreography and too much fancy stuff. And I don't think that's true. I still think they want to have fun. Some of this stuff was fun. Some of it was otherwise. The imaginary couple that Kip's got on his, they love that kind of stuff. That's great. You can do a do-side. I call them little green ghosts about that high. You can do a do-side-do with a little green. Don't step on him. And people have fun with that, and they will do that. And lots of times they will dance that stuff better than they will dance with people because you got to pay attention. Okay? But mostly, if it isn't working, It's not showmanship. Sit down and think about what you can do. Go home and find just a few things that make you a little bit different and have fun with them. And I wish you good luck, okay? Thanks.
A big hand for Larry. I'm just a fun kind of guy, Cole. And Mr. Wayne.
All right, what do you do after this? It's all been covered here. Drag up the tail end. Okay, there are a couple of things I look at showmanship through choreography. One phrase that I have coined that I use a lot in the sessions that I teach is confidence through knowledge. I think that you do not have time to employ any showmanship or very little showmanship if you're not real confident that you're going to be able to resolve the square, that you're going to be able to get the dancers through the material that you intend to call. You must know what you're doing to be able to employ showmanship at all. Okay, there's much more to showmanship through choreography than just presenting neat or complex, if you will, choreography. Okay, there's much more to that. You can present the best choreography in the world, but if the dancers are not dancing, you've had no showmanship whatsoever. They're simply going to leave saying, hey, I didn't dance all night. I don't like this guy. Okay, you must get the dancers through the choreography. They must win. So to me, to employ showmanship with your choreography, then you need a presentation philosophy. You need to know how to present this material so that the dancers can win every time. And I'm asked often, I use a lot of real odd material in the dances that I call. And I'm often asked, what percentage of the floor do you want dancing at all times? I want 100%. That's what I want. I want 100% dancing all of the time. What will I settle for? 100%. That's what I will settle for. What do I always have? I can't tell you 100% again, but yes, that is what I want, and that's what I settle for is 100%. I move back and pick these dancers up. I want them all dancing all the time. So I think that you need a presentation philosophy that you use to get the dancers through the material that you're going to do, the neat choreography. Dropped. Went totally away. We've talked a lot, several things here. A good point. We've talked a lot and danced around our toes up here a little bit about the definitions of these movements and the program that we're working at. I just totally believe in the definitions of the movements and the way they are defined by CALLERLAB. I believe in them because I'm one of these old folks. There weren't any definitions when I started, and I didn't buy any when they first come out because I knew them. I was very confident of that. And when I bought the definition, well, I didn't buy them. Somebody showed me one time. And I found out that I didn't know the definitions, and I'd been calling 10 years. Yeah, this was a real odd thing to me. It really was, because I was teaching dancers to dance the way I was taught to dance, and when I found out that was wrong, it was a real shock to me, and particularly when my dad taught me to dance. You know, that hurt my feelings a whole lot. But the point is, I believe in these definitions, and they're very good, and I believe that we, as callers, must be experts with these definitions. Along with that, I believe anything that you can tell these dancers to do, they understand what you want, they dance it, and they have a good time. Folks, that's legal. That is my opinion. Okay? So, yes. Okay, couple of things in establishing a presentation philosophy, okay? Obviously, be very familiar with the definitions. Know the formations and the arrangements that the movements are legal to be called from. Right? What formation and or arrangement of that formation is this movement legal to be called from? A good place to go and find this material is we have a standard applications for Mainstream and Plus. That's very, very nice material. It's been worked very hard. Get a hold of this and take a look at the standard applications. And that's not all of the legal arrangements and formations, but it is those arrangements and formations that we can reasonably expect the greatest dancer success from. Okay? Know some of the things that I like to study, and I see some of the things that Kip looks into, and I'm going to steal some of his material. Some of the things I look at is not only the clockwise or counterclockwise flow of the movement. Can this particular movement be done by the centers or the ends only? Can I have the centers doing this movement while the ends and or outsides are doing another movement there? This is another way that I spice up some of the choreography, is looking for formations within formations. The centers and the outsides, or the ends and the outsides, and these sort of things, okay? I look for the pitfalls where I'm doing this movement, the formation I'm doing it from, and or the arrangement that I'm doing the movement from. Where are the dancers likely to have a problem? And I know sometimes this takes a lot of experience to learn things, but we have to learn things like, if I call head square through and touch a quarter and all eight circulate, the folks are going to do a split circulate. As a general rule, they're going to do a split circulate. This is a pitfall that I need to understand so I can give them more information. If I call head square through, four, do, side, do, make a wave, and split circulate, probably they're going to all eight circulate. These are the pitfalls. And I can tell you this and get a square on the floor, and you will do that. You know, I've seen it time and time again. It just happens. So we need to develop helper words to get past these pitfalls. We need to be able to help the dancers. I am not a believer of throwing away choreography. You do not look at something and say, hey, that is neat. Find out the dancers can't dance it, and so you throw it away. This is a terrible waste of good material. Find out what you need to do to present it so the dancers can understand what you want to do, what you expect them to do. How can I get them through this choreography? It will give you a good study, and I found for my own case, when I'm working at what are the pitfalls here, I come up with twice as much choreography by the time I'm ending because of the study that I have done to get them through this material. This works very, very well for me. Okay? Some of the things that you can do to get over the pitfalls, if you've got something that's going to be difficult for a minute and you're a phrase caller and you're using a lot of words, stop phrasing and prompt call. Just tell them, do this, do this, do this. Okay? That will help you get over some of the hard areas. Do some directional calling. Be very careful, I find, in working some of the overseas places that we call. Be careful with directional calling then, because they will do the movement you call and then they will do the directions you gave them. Okay? Because they don't understand. You know, you tell them swing through half right, half left, they'll do a swing through and then they'll do a half right and a half left. Okay? They take all of this. But if you know your group, you know, do a lot of directional calling. Things that I like to do in directional calling is double words. It was mentioned a chase right. Okay? Or a chase left. The dancers may not be prepared for this. I will, if I'm going to do a chase left, I might say left chase left and double my words. This works very well for me. I do the same thing with boys and girls. Boys run boys, girls hinge girls, and just keep their attention, keep them listening to me. Okay, and double words works a lot for me. Understand that if you're doing very intricate choreography, are very complex, and I'm thinking what I heard from Kip, complex and level of difficulty is getting pretty close to the same in what you were talking. Is that true, Kip? Well, that I wasn't totally sure of that, but I was hearing that as opposed to what brought this to mind. A spin, chain, and exchange the gears is a relatively complex call, but it is not as difficult as lines facing out, walk, and dodge. That's complex. Okay? I mentioned that was brought up this morning. That's a real strange idea. You like that? I don't know how I would. It was explained to me early this morning. Since I opened this up on myself, I've got to lines facing out, walking dodge should look something like that. Like a half sachet. Okay, is that correct? Well, if you face somebody's back, you walk. If you're not, you dodge, and everybody's not facing somebody's back, so everybody has to dodge. It looks like a half sachet.
Unless, of course, you prefer a Chevy.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Building the dancer's trust. If I'm going to show off a little bit, I'm going to have to build the dancer's trust. I've learned over a period of time, if I walk in on the first tip and I beat them up with terribly difficult choreography, for the rest of the night, I'm going to work very, very hard. Okay, I scare them, and they're not sure if they're going to do these things. Folks, these people are out to have a good time. Something that I've had to learn about the definitions and the dancers having a good time, my poor wife explained to me, and it was a difficult thing for her to explain to me. She said, Wayne, most square dancers don't want to know the definitions. They just want to square dance. This was a difficult thing for me to understand. You've got to know the definition. So treat them easily during the early stages of the tip. Okay, do things that are vanilla is my term for it. Do easy things to start with. Okay, and then start testing your floor. I do simple things like heads past you, you turn back past you, and a partner trade. Star through, they're facing the outsides. Okay, what did I get into now?
That's called lulling them into a false sense of security.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Okay. From there, when I start theming on something, if I'm going to work with something and I know that it's a little bit difficult for whatever reason, or complex, if you will, then I may want to work from a we can't do this to we can do this to a surprise we did this. Okay? Simple things like a half sachet. Okay? Dancers can't do a half sachet for the most part anymore. Okay? They can roll away with a half sachet. They can do a ladies in the men's sachet if the circles are going to the left. They can't do it if it's going to the right, because then they have to go the other direction. We all understand that from the definition, right? But a half sachet, if I will take them from line to four, roll away, or do a right and left through, and a half sachet. And I find that that's a very nice flowing movement. Okay, that's to me a little better than a rollaway because they're crossed over anyway. And I will mention to them, I will accept a rollaway if that's what you choose to do. And then I will star through in a California twirl, pass through, trade back, go to the other side, right and left through, and a half sachet. Star through, California twirl, back facing in, star through, pass through, trade back, go to the other side. And I will do quite a bit of this and work with half sachets. I may put the boys together and the girls together and do some half sachets. Then at some point, I will start from a zero box and call touch a quarter. Centers trade, centers run. That puts the girls over here together, the boys over here together. Girls do a U-turn back while the boys do a half sachet. Now the girls do a half sachet, then the centers do a half sachet. Everybody half sachet, and your corner's in your left hand, folks. Allemande left. Okay? They have one. A half-ass what? But I have themed this, and I have built this all the way from the start to the finish. And the dancers have a real good time with this. And I've gone from something that is not a difficult movement, but it is very, very complex in that the dancers no longer know how to do a half sachet. They can do a rollaway, but they can't do a half sachet. And you put boys together and girls together, and they're rolling each other, and they're trying to figure out how to do a half sachet. Okay, use of formations and or arrangements to do very simple material, folks. From a zero box, head square through and set up a zero box, star through and reverse flutter wheel to a right and left through to a Dixie style to a wave and a left square through two to an Allemande left. Now, I've done no material, no individual movement that is difficult to do. But, folks, dancers can't do that. They simply cannot do that. They can't do a left square through two from a left-handed ocean wave. They simply cannot do that. Although each movement is not difficult in itself, you put it in certain formations and or arrangements, folks, and it becomes very, very difficult for the dancers to do. Okay? Non-symmetrics, I find, is a neat thing to use for showmanship in choreography. I do a lot of non-symmetric choreography. My opinion is, for the most part, it is all memorized. It is all memorized. I do have a few rules that I know if I do these things, then I can do these other things. And I don't have to memorize big, long things because I follow certain rules. But I have to memorize the rules. So if you're going to work with non-symmetrics, there are a lot of memorization that you need to do. Their surprises are neat things. Okay, and you can surprise the dancers very, very easily. Again, from a zero box, star through. Okay, you've got a corner line known as half sashayed, right and left through, pass through, and a U-turn back to an Allemande left. Will surprise the dancers. Their corner is right beside them in their hand, and they're still looking for their corner because they're all in a half sashayed line, and they did not realize that they were there. Okay, you can do the same thing if you're working some plus choreography, or you can put this into advanced from a zero box, head square through, star through, and a right and left through. From here, you can pass through and stunner, step forward, in, slide together, in behind them. That's a step and slide if we want to go to the advanced movements. Everybody face in and roll and face in again and spread. And so we're doing an explode and roll and spread, and they're in the same place, that corner line, with their corner in their left hand right beside them, folks. Okay. You can put this together in your presentation where this is all mainstream, and there is not much to this, but this is very, very surprising for those dancers. What's the matter? Ed's laughing at me hard. But the bottom line, and I'm going to shut up and open this for questions and answers rather than getting the dancers on the floor. The bottom line, my opinion is, if you're going to use any showmanship at all through your choreography, you must know what you're doing. Not only that, if you're depending on the dancer's ability to dance to keep you from getting lost as a caller, you got something backwards, folks. You got something backwards. You need to know what you're doing, and I agree with Larry. I don't remember long memorized routines either, but I know short little neat things that I will take them from here and go do this right quick. But most of it, I'm not one of these callers that will tell you, well, I just happened to see that would work from there. No, folks, the reason it worked from there is because I knew it would, and I put them there and did it. Okay? You must know what you're doing. You must see to it that the dancers win. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. We'd like to open the floor up to some questions. We've had a long day. You guys have been in meetings and most of the day. And we see you begin to nod off, maybe looking forward to some dinner. But I'd like you to understand a couple of things as you go to these various sessions, interest sessions. The callers who are up here on the panel are unassuming local callers, just like you guys. We got our own home programs. We face the exact same problems you do. And I'd like to emphasize two very, very important points. We come here to give you as much information as we can in a short, limited amount of time. And every once in a while we'll misspeak ourselves. Every once in a while we'll say something that's a hasty generalization. You need to just permit that to float by rather than to pick on everything that's said in these sessions. It's important because you're depriving yourself of additional information, maybe some little memory gem that's about ready to come out, and it gets lost in a pursuit of exactness to definitions or programs and that type of thing. So give us a little bit of leeway here on the panels. Most of the callers that you're listening to on these panels are very competent callers. They've been doing it a long time, and they have a lot of information to give you. And so I implore you to allow them to do that. And good point. And secondly, the information that you're getting here, if you just have this single-minded attitude that you're going to run back home and apply this stuff to your dancers without examining it, studying it, and doing your own preparation, you can be a harmful weapon out there. So there's... You might be out of business soon, but in the process, we don't know how much destruction might result. So please, with the attitude of education, with the attitude of trying to make ourselves better professionals, take this information home, ferret out what works for you with your group, and apply it when you think it's necessary to apply it. You are the final judge on the use of any of this material. And with those 2 points aside, we'll take any questions from the floor. We just ask you to speak into this portable microphone, which, who's going to carry this around for us? Okay. We're ready.
He's doing research.
We got lucky on this one, didn't we?
Anybody? And yes, Chuck?
Okay, I'm Chuck Bermeal from Arizona. Thanks for all these great ideas. I enjoyed all that and appreciate it. Just one comment I've heard in several classes I've been to today about DBD and APD, and it's kind of been put out in vain. It's not anything we really want to pay too much attention to. Dancers can't do it and all that kind of stuff. Just one thing. I don't care how you learn to dance. Every dancer dances to a definition. It's either when you're here and they call that, you go over there, or they use a real definition. And give your dancers a break. They're not stupid. They can understand a definition.
Okay, good point. We're going to get the microphone right over on this side.
Run, Ted, run. See Ted, run.
See Ted, run.
I just want Wayne to explain that lines of four facing out, walk and dodge.
My understanding is, and I must tell you this to start with, I don't know that I agree with this or don't agree with it. I just heard it this morning, and it's kind of going across my understanding is the lines of four facing out, and I have not reviewed the definition of a walk and dodge, but right off the top of my head, that if you're facing somebody's back, you walk straight ahead. If you're not facing somebody's back, you dodge. Okay, and if they're in lines of four facing out, then no one is facing anyone's back, and so everyone has to dodge. They dodge on their, not away from the square entire, and so it looked just like a half sachet. Both of them are dodging past each other. That's my understanding. I just heard this a while ago. I thought that was, wow, that's interesting.
Randy Doherty from Arizona. Wayne, my concept of that, if the people are looking both out, they're both dodging on the same line. The rule for the half sachet would be for the right-hand dancer to go first. I'm not sure it's legit. Dancers have used it as a showmanship weapon. I always say the big one goes first.
Good point.
One of your handouts has a walk and dodge. You just have a static square. Heads, walk, and dodge. And then I'm not sure what your phrasing is on your handout. But in that situation, they're doing nothing more than a pass-through, because they're all walkers. But our definition at mainstream for the walk and dodge says if we're all looking in, the caller must designate who's doing the walking, who's doing the dodging. So it is kind of a catch-22. The dancers, if you call heads, walk, and dodge, you're calling illegit, because we are told by the definition that you designate who's walking, who's dodging. That would be the same situation as the lines looking out, I would think.
I have to address that momentarily since Randy brought it up. My opinion is exactly what he said. I don't know where you saw that heads, walk, and dodge in this material.
In your handout, one of the handouts.
Huh?
It's in your handout.
Okay, I have not read these handouts, and so I don't know what is there. Okay. I did not make these handouts, and I have not read them, so I haven't seen that, Randy. And I would agree with that. The definition of a walk and dodge says if they're both facing in, you must designate who is to walk and who is to dodge. Okay. This other thing I just heard this morning, I don't know if I agree or disagree. I just heard that this morning. I thought I'd pass it along.
Okay, while we're over there, I will. It just occurred to me that there's an error in one of my figures. I caught it when I was on the plane, and maybe we should make this like, I don't know, you win a prize if you find it. There is a star through or a slide through missing, and I don't see it right away. But if I come to it, I'll remind you of it. But they take this home and read it off on your floor. Blame it on Garvey. Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, we did that from Kip Garvey stuff. If the definition of walk and dodge, and you must make the designation at facing, if they're facing in lines, does that carry all the way through, or does it at some point, like in the A2 program or the C1 program, become a different concept and then everybody passes through? Does it change somewhere in one of the programs that we have? Am I making myself clear, Wayne? Kip?
Yeah. Let me just answer. This goes really beyond the purview of this particular session, quite frankly.
Good point.
However, you will occasionally see things leak down, if you'll permit me to use that expression, from higher levels, where some caller or some dancer might pick on something that looks particularly clever and say, "Gee, I think the folks at home could do that," and it sort of leaks its way down. To give you another example, and maybe I shouldn't, because I really want to terminate this conversation. But recently we had a situation where some callers out our way were calling at a higher level dance, I might add, from a boy-boy, girl-girl, right-handed ocean wave. They said, everybody do your part of a boy's run. And what they were looking for was the boys to trade and the girls to slide, to end in an inverted line. And, yeah, so I said, whoa, they're going to be happy with that in the basic and mainstream committee. But... But that goes beyond what we're doing here, and in one way, and in another way it doesn't, because if I can impress one thing on all of you, it would be to exercise appropriate judgment for your own groups at all times. We want people to dance and have a good time. That should be top priority in every area, regardless of level.
Showmanship, good. Good.
Kip, would you please give that email address one more time?
Sure. I'll tell you, Doug Sewell's going to have me for this one. It's Major Domo. The prefix on the email address is MAJORDOMO. Major Domo, one word, at DMS Home. That's David Michael Stephen Home. Dot Youngstown. Dot OH, which is Ohio. .US. Okay? And that's at the University of Ohio in Youngstown. They're using a server there to act as the central mail list dispenser, if you will. Yeah, and then in the body of the text you write the words, you can get away with two words. You can say subscribe, and the second word would be SD-callers. SD-callers. Now, there are a number of mail lists you can subscribe to. It's my understanding, and believe me, I'm not a genius at this, but Clark is doing a session at 5, I think, and he may touch on this, and you have some other birds of a feather type computer sessions that are going on later on. They might give you better clarification. But I understand that you can also subscribe to a Square Dancer list, which is SD-dancer, I believe, or dancers. Yeah. What's that now? Oh, yeah, you have to put your own email address. Isn't that automatic? No? After you say what now? Where are you going to put this? Subscribe, space, and your email address, your own individual email address. Okay, so there's 3 things that need to be in the body in the text. Subscribe, space, SD-callers, space, and then your email address. Is that correct? Okay. And by the way, you unsubscribe the exact same way. So if your mailbox is getting full, you might want to unsubscribe for a couple of days. Yeah, right. Okay, do we have any other questions before we break for dinner? We appreciate it. We hope you guys have had a good session, and we'll see you after dinner. Thank you.